Good. So, ready, Pete? Yeah? Yeah. Okay, so, yeah, I mean, I realised earlier this year that it was the 20th anniversary of the sort of real launch of the anti-GM food campaign, and this will be a good thing for us to celebrate and just kind of recognise, you know, the campaign has been a little bit forgotten. You know, it's not no longer the focus of attention in you know, in green politics and food politics and so on. But it was, and you know, some of the organisations are still, you know, of course, pursuing it. But particularly in the period of sort of 1997 to 2003, it was the most amazing. Amazingly powerful national campaign that you know, that deserves to be, you know, really deserves to be remembered. You know, I think we've maybe forgotten just how incredibly successful it was at achieving its aims. That you know, basically it took on a very major industry and some of the biggest companies in the world, and you know, with a certain, you know, qualifications, basically we won. We achieved what we wanted to, you know, what we wanted to do, and that's, you know, that's I think pretty remarkable. I think another really important aspect of the GM food campaign was just how much was at stake, you know, with GM foods. That we are talking about basically control of the global food system. And you know, the power that can, you know, there was very clearly, and still is, an attempt to basically achieve control of the global food system through. Oh, that might be somebody at the door. Could somebody? Yeah, to achieve control of the global food system, basically through, you know, patenting GM crops and controlling whether farmers can use them, you know, and under what conditions farmers can use them, and so on. And I think, so that's, you know, a huge thing was at stake there. I think it's been incredibly significant beyond this this issue itself. Sorry. Hi. Yeah, it's been very significant beyond this issue itself, in the sense that it was kind of certainly the biggest instance in which, on an issue related to technology, where it turned into, and the politics of technology, where it turned into, you know, a national campaign that lots of people were interested in, and yeah, you know, and actually achieved its goals, and the result of that, I think, has reverberated down the years. And for example, just the other day, there was an article in the Guardian saying experts fear GM-style public backlash over AI. So that, you know, I think there's an overall in our society a sort of technocratic system that pushes new technologies through one after the other, and that the GM food campaign, and you know, it's a very slick public relations machine, which actually one of the things that the GM food campaign did was make that machinery realise it needed to, you know, improve its act, and they have done. In many ways, but yeah, it was really a shock for the whole, you know, the corporations, the government machinery, all the PR agencies and so on, and the scientific community, of course. It was a major shock for them. So I think that's another reason why, you know, the GM campaign was an incredibly significant campaign. And so I wanted to kind of honour the people who, you know, who led and also, you know, took part in that campaign, and yeah, particularly in that first period, but also to, you know, to applaud the people actually who have kept going for the long haul. some of whom are sitting here, like Jim and Michael. And, when that went away, oh hello, when that when the focus shifted onto other campaigns, some people kept going with the GM issue, and that has also been very important. And I also actually wanted to very briefly mention one or two of those people who unfortunately are not here today. It's always invidious to mention particular individuals. Nonetheless, I'm very sad that one particular person, Gerald Miles, who's been a total stalwart of the anti-GM food campaigns, couldn't be here today because he's at what is it?
Land Workers Alliance.
Land Workers Alliance, thank you. Yeah, their national meeting, which unfortunately clashed. And the other person I wanted to mention, who I think some of you old-timers will remember, who made a huge contribution to the campaign, sadly died a couple of years ago, is Mei Wan Ho, who just...
Sorry, who?
Mei Wan Ho.
Yeah.
Her book on GM, how did it go? Bad Science and Big Business.
She's written several books.
Yeah, but that was the one that came out in the late 90s that really had a really huge impact. Oh, I think there's someone else.
It's Ian.
Oh, it's
Ian's there.
Oh, okay.
Has he got a key?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to mention her. Her contribution. And if you Google Institute for Science and Society, you will find an archive of the amazing magazine that she produced for 10, 15 years, I think.
May I
Yeah.
interrupt?
Yeah.
You mentioned that. There's a group of us who are trying to restart the magazine online.
Oh, really? Oh, that's great news. Great, okay. So, all right, so that's, now I'll just do a very kind of brief, as it were, prehistory of 1997 to sort of set the picture. I actually started working on GM in 1990, just after I finished my PhD, and I was working for a little organisation called the Genetics Forum, which was the first NGO that started up working on this issue. And for a long time, for 7 years, it really looked like this was never really going to be a big campaign. Although some, NGOs were taking it on, including Greenpeace, because it was a campaign about science, and the politics of science, which for most people, is always difficult to, get their attention on something to do with science. Most people think if it's to do with science, then they're too stupid to understand it, and so they don't have a right to an opinion and all of that. So partly it was to do with it being about science, and the second thing was it was about something that was sort of somewhere in the future that we want to worry about, but it wasn't here yet. And that was another thing that stopped it being a major public campaign. In those years, 1990 to 97, things that happened in that period. In 1990, we had the EU Directive 92/20 that set the regulatory system for releasing GMOs into the environment. There was quite a big campaign in those years that was also a good, successful campaign against bovine growth hormone, or BST, which was eventually banned in Europe, although the Americans continued to use it. There was an issue going on, had been going on since the late 1980s, about patenting of genes and seeds. There was a directive going through the EU, and in 1995, a pretty unprecedented event, the European Parliament actually blocked that directive. Pretty much unheard of for the European Parliament to actually say no to a directive. It's, the European Parliament's job is generally to add a few amendments and so on, because the EU is basically an entirely democratic system. So that was a huge success actually in 1995. Sadly, 3 years later, they did succeed in getting it into law in the EU. So that was those were the major campaigns I think in that period. Then there were a couple of little bits of direct action on GM crop trials in 1994. And then there was a rather notorious event in Rome at the UN Food and Agriculture Organization where a bunch of people staged a protest involving taking their clothes off and walking around with slogans on themselves. That gained a lot of, it certainly, was I think probably the first time the media took a bit of a serious interest in the GMO issue. But it was really 1997 when Monsanto soya was going to be coming into the country, and people realised this is going to be in 65% of all processed foods in supermarkets. That really kind of caught the public's attention, and that's so in the summer of 1997 was the big gene gathering, which was organised by a bunch of organisations. The Genetic Engineering Network formed that summer, and this was its first big thing, and held at a big country house out in Herefordshire, and so I, from my point of view, I think that was the place where the campaign really took off from that event. So I thought it would be good to call this event the Big Gene Gathering Plus 20, as they do for UN type conferences. So I think that's kind of set the scene, and so now Jim, if you want to come up and
Yeah, sure.
yeah.